Hey guys, this is Miss Carson. I'm going to continue doing our first chapter Fridays. The book that I've chosen is on the South Carolina Book Award nominee list, of course. The title is We'll Fly Away by Bryan Bliss. It also has a National Book Award, and it is located in our realistic fiction genre. So I'm going to read the back cover. There is a preface of a letter that was written, and then, of course, the first chapter. So, sometimes it feels like the walls are closing in on me. I can't say I wish you were here, but maybe you know what I mean. Best friends Luke and Toby just want to get out of their dead-end town. They've been dreaming about it for as long as they can remember. And they're almost there. A few more months and they can leave behind the neglectful parents, all the people who look the other way, and the fridges that never seem to have enough food inside. They are so close to freedom, until they each make a choice, well, a series of choices really, that alter their paths forever. I'll go ahead and say there is some language in the book, so when I read, I'm going to alter that, since this is going on YouTube. So just giving you a heads up. So, the letter. November 5th. T. The sister said it would be good to write you. But after everything, I don't know. I mean, what am I supposed to say? It's not like you're going to listen. And I stopped really talking to everyone a long time ago. So what the heck is writing a letter going to do to help? The sister wants me to speak honestly, to let my feelings out. And holy heck, writing a letter is definitely better than doing one of those stupid art projects where sister has me paint my feelings. Can you imagine that? Last time I painted a tree with the sun coming up over the top of it, and because I knew she would eat that mess up. Sister told me it meant I was growing. And ha, man, you wouldn't believe how fat I've gotten. Before the row, I'd been in county for months. I was doing push-ups and sit-ups every day. That was the only way out to make it. The dudes in here can still be pretty rough, but don't get me wrong. But it's nothing like that place. Every night someone would start screaming, getting their behind beat for the simplest of things. Ramen packets, cigarettes, so I bulked up. Took on anybody who came in my direction. They looked at me wrong, I threw a fist. Eventually it becomes second nature. Eventually, you just turn yourself off. But now, dang, I'm round as hell. There isn't much else to do here, and sit and eat and drink. Some of the dudes like Eddie play ball and take classes. So what's the point? Every guy in this place has a ticking clock around his neck. Sister says my depression makes me say those things, but like I told her, I'm not depressed. I've just got my eyes wide open. Whenever I say that, she mm-hms it away and tells me not to waste her time. When she first came around, I got hard with her. Told her not to bother me. Thought I'd really told her what's what, too. Eddie and everybody lost their minds when that happened. Laughed like I stood up and told a joke. Because sure enough, the next day, here comes sister stomping down the row in those red cowboy boots, loud as heck. Sat down right in front of me and started talking like I never said a sideways word to her. Eddie says, once she's got an eye for you, you're through. And I guess that's why I'm writing this BS letter, right? I swear, T, sometimes it feels like the walls are closing in on me. I can't say I wish you were here, but maybe you know what I mean. Luke. So chapter 1. Luke and Toby didn't know a thing about planes. Hadn't even set foot in one before they found that rusted-out crop duster halfway between Highway 10 and a little gas station that marked the end of incorporation and the beginning of what people referred to as simply county. But you wouldn't have known it, not with how they went at that fixed-wing plane. Every can and bottle from here to Charlotte was claimed and redeemed. 5 cents that neither of them had before. And what they could, they pawned. Old bikes, a forgotten guitar, the collection of centennial quarters Toby's mom had given him before the split. This was about building bank. Cash, money, green. So forget candy and movies, forget baseball and swimming at the public pool, which was just an excuse to stare at the college girls who spent their summers guarding those tall towers. Forget all of it, because that summer was nothing but duct tape and 2x4s. Hours and hours, ditching chores and trips to the mall, dropping everything for that plane. The summers passed, and they never got the wing reattached to the body, the fuselage mended. They grew too tall and too old to spend their time on fantasies, to believe that the plane held any magic. At least that's what they told themselves. But they kept coming, kept that plane like a military secret. If he had to swear it now, Luke still dreamed he'd come through the stand of trees and see the plane transform. Feel the engine in his chest, the wind in his hair, and Toby standing proudly with his arms spread wide like, I told you, I told you. He'd get in that plane with his best friend of years and years and take off, never looking back, never to be seen again. Luke downed the last of the Mountain Dew as Toby watched, fascinated. What? Luke asked, throwing the bottle behind him where the cockpit should have been. You drank an entire 2-liter, Toby said. By yourself. Luke shrugged, hoping the subject would pass, but of course it didn't. Not with Toby. His mouth moments from a grin, from the crap he was constantly talking. Toby was always boasting how his best friend was the best wrestler in the state of North Carolina had ever seen. A straight-up monster. I thought you were cutting weight, Toby said. Luke squinted into the sun. It was close to 5. His mom would need to be woken up. She'd just gotten on at the Pepsi plant working 3rd shift. It was the reason they had the out-of-date, nearly flat soda in the first place. The only thing he'd put in his stomach all day. I'm going to make weight, he said, trying to force confidence into his voice. He was still 4 pounds over, which seemed impossible, seeing as for weeks he'd been living on only cereal and whatever his brothers left on their plates. When he decided to drop to 170 and take on Conor Herrera, Coach O tried to talk him out of it. Dropping 12 pounds wasn't easy, even for somebody as committed as Luke. And honestly, there was nothing left to prove. As a freshman, Luke had been scrawny, but a tough 125-pounder. He surprised everybody by winning the state championship, especially the senior from Chapel Hill he destroyed in the final. From there, it was 135. 155, he went 3 for 3, taking state every year. At 182, there was no real competition. He'd added his 4th championship the same way he'd taken the previous 3, joining maybe 10 other people who'd ever finished with that number. Conor Herrera was on the same path, just 12 light pounds under Luke. He also had 3 state titles, and thanks to the expensive club team Luke couldn't afford, a shiny new junior national championship. Luke could go 182 and nobody would fault him, but he wanted Herrera. He'd lose the pounds and he'd make that weight. But you drank the whole thing, Toby said, as if reading his mind. I've got a week, he snapped. It was the same way he worked the mat, quick and decisive, moving before his opponent even had a chance to think. 1, 2, 3, done. Luke knew Toby had more to say. Usually, Luke would just let him talk until he lost interest. Sometimes it took an hour, but eventually, Luke would sit back like he'd just finished a big meal, sigh long and steady. Luke didn't want to talk about the scale for another minute, let alone the next hour. Mom said you can spend the night again if you want. Toby's entire body relaxed. Luke didn't miss how he tried to keep his face from going slack too. from showing even a moment of relief. All Toby said was, "I get the couch." Home was a one-bedroom apartment half a mile from the plane, shared by Luke's mom and twin brothers Jack and Petey. Heck, raisers even at 5, but now both of them would be screaming about dinner. How they were starving, and how his mother would have another excuse for why she hadn't put anything on the stove yet, for not shopping. Luke looked up at the sun again. "It's fine, I'll sleep on the floor," he said. They should leave, but he didn't want to stand up. Out here, he didn't have to think about wrestling, the scholarship offer he'd just accepted, school, any of it. Time stopped in the small grove of trees, and he wanted to believe he could spend the rest of his life sitting here, drinking soda, eating whatever he wanted, talking crap with his best friend until the sun went down. But Toby slapped the side of the plane and stood up. Even sitting, Luke's head came past his waist. And when the sun was behind them, like now, he could almost see through him. Every drop of blood, every vein twisted under his skin. That meant somebody had to have seen the bruises that sometimes peeked from under Toby's shirt. But other than the one do-gooder in 6th grade, who they ignored, and was gone a year later anyway, no teacher or principal or any other adult had ever said a thing. As soon as he walked into the apartment, Luke knew his mother was still asleep, that she'd be late for her shift tonight, that the apartment wasn't big, but he still ran across the living room, nearly killing himself when he didn't see one of the boys' scooters laying across the floor. Behind him, Jack and Petey were taunting Toby. It wouldn't be all that long before they'd be bigger than his friend too. He knocked on his mother's door. The only sound was the fan, clicking each time it oscillated across the room. "Mom?" he said, opening the door. It was hot. The air, a mix of cigarettes and stale soda. Across the small room, the twins' mattress was on the floor, a mess of blankets and dirty stuffed animals. He spoke softly into the small room. A shadow moved, followed by his mother's tired voice. Jesus, Petey, I told you to get some cereal." "Mom," Luke said, "it's nearly 6. At first, Luke thought she'd fallen back asleep. That's how long the pause was. But then she sat up, knocking the fan over as she ran to the closet, naked and cussing. 6 o'clock! Where the heck have you been?" She flung clothes out of the hamper, finally pulling out a light blue Pepsi shirt and put it on. Their father had left when the twins were barely home from the hospital. Luke had been 13, old enough to realize that his parents weren't in love the way people seemed to be in movies and television shows. And once his dad had gone, Luke just assumed that was something that happened, that people left you without another word. His mother was still spinning around the room. "You were supposed to be back at 5. "I didn't realize it was so late," Luke said. "Well, we both messed up then, didn't we?" Luke turned and started back to the living room. She wasn't wrong. He would have been home at 5 to make sure she was awake and didn't have to deal with the twins as she was getting ready to leave, to make sure she kept this job longer than her stints at the hosiery mill or as a waitress at the Waffle House. But he didn't keep the indignation from rising up. His mom knew how to set an alarm, and she didn't need to spend her mornings watching trashy television when she could be sleeping. Toby had the twins pinned to the carpet, smiling as he ate a banana, the peel spots blacked. Luke had no idea where he'd found the thing. The boys called for help as he passed, laughing out every other word. "Stop bothering Toby," Luke said, pretending to be mad as he went to the kitchen. They howled and spit and laughed. He'd made his mother a sandwich, peeling the last thin piece of turkey out of the package and pressing them between 2 slices of white bread, chips, and a small apple from the back of the refrigerator. There wasn't much else, so he put a handful of cereal into a plastic bag and set it on the table, just as his mom hurried to the room. "Hey, Dorian," Toby said. She waved without looking. "I need you to figure out dinner, Luke." Toby let the twins off the floor, and they came running to their mother, talking a mile a minute, barely breathing between their words. She nodded distractedly as she searched for her lighter. "And can you take them to the park or something?" she told Luke. God knows they need to get out of this apartment. Luke didn't move. Of course they'd go to the park. He took them to the park nearly every day. He tried to hide his annoyance, but Doreen saw it immediately. She came over and put a hand on his forearm. "Listen, I'm sorry, but I depend on you." Luke knew that too. He couldn't take more than a few steps, could barely breathe without a reminder of how much she depended on him. He forced himself to look her in the eyes. When he was a kid, he would tell people she was the most beautiful woman in the world. They'd laugh, and he never knew why. She was still beautiful. Even now, her eyes hung with perpetual black circles, her clothes stained and wrinkled. She reached for him again, as if she might ruffle his hair the way she had when he was younger, but stopping herself. She sparked the lighter instead, taking a long drag and speaking through the exhale. "I'll see you in the morning, okay? And boys, be good. Listen to your brother." The door slammed behind her, and a few seconds later the truck rumbled out of the apartment complex. It was quiet when Jack came barreling towards Luke, arms out like a glider. Right before the collision, Luke dropped to his knee and swept the wriggling kid up, squeezing him close to his shoulder. Petey came at him, fist balled and face lit with a goofy smile. They both struggled, kicking air and yelling to be let down. Luke bounced them once, feeling their ribs against his shoulder. "All you're going to do is come back at me," Luke said, squeezing them again. They were one voice with their promises, their assurances, and of course, when he put them back on the carpet, it was only a second before they attacked. Toby jumped in then, grabbing Petey and crying out when the kid tried to bite his ear, dirty at the end. Luke held Jack at arm's length as the boys twisted, contorting his body back and forth like a wild animal. The twins were both laughing, but even then they were liable and the perfect height to take a swing at your crotch. Luke's mother always said her people were hot-blooded, angry like a stick of dynamite. She said it casually, a way to explain behavior at the family reunions, but Luke wanted her to keep going, to tell him and the boys that they needed to be more than a wild card to control the explosion, because that was just as much a badge of strength. Luke needed something he could hold on to, could use to navigate the world. The first time he wrestled, he nearly got himself kicked off the team, wrenching a boy's head and throwing him to the ground like he was made of air. The kid was crying when the ref slapped the mat, and Luke came up proud, arms raised, the same murder in his blood. But Coach O had laid a look on him that could have withered an oak. All he said was, "Never again, not on my mat." Control, balance, discipline. How many times had Luke beaten someone stronger and faster only because he understood these things? The need to pause and breathe and not come out swinging. And when it was time, you attack hard and fast. And that didn't mean crap if you went out half-cocked at every word said against you. "We're going to the park," Luke said. Petey gave Luke a skeptical look. "What park?" "Wildcat, the one with those wooden castles." The twins shared a defeated but happy look, and for a second Luke let down his defenses. which was exactly when Petey clocked him hard in the groin. The twins tore out of the front door, and Toby followed, laughing just as hard. They watched the boys against the deep sunlight, not talking until Toby yawned loudly and said, "I need to get a job. Maybe bagging groceries at Food Lion. I saw the sweet pickup for sale on Fairgrove Church Road." "You'd be a terrible bagger," Luke said. Toby had only recently gotten his license, showing up late to school with it still in his hand. Luke had been a wreck all morning, expecting the nurse or the principal, who be it, to pull him out of class, to tell him his friend had finally ended up in the hospital, or worse. "We could take it up to Baker's Mountain," Toby said, ignoring him. "Throw some sleeping bags in the back." The excitement and possibility came off him like day-old booze. Luke watched Jack push Petey, who immediately tackled him. They wrestled for a few seconds before Luke stood up and yelled their names. As he sat down, Toby was still talking. He nodded absently. "Camping. We'd find some girls, bring some ladies with us." "Dang, man, dang." And then he was off, standing up and humping the air vigorously until Jack and Petey came over, out of breath and utterly confused. A look on their faces like, "Is he having a seizure?" Luke stood up and pushed Toby, stopping the gyrations, and hard enough that Toby hit the ground. For a moment there was a flash, like a knife coming out, across Toby's face. Luke had seen it, of course, when they were kids and still threw fists to settle arguments. But once in middle school, when Toby's dad came home from the deuce smelling like cheap whiskey, they'd broken a window or something. But heck, there had never been a reason for a butt-kicking in Toby's house. Still, they stood in the kitchen staring at the cracked linoleum, trying not to give the guy a reason or the satisfaction. Luke got sent home before the real whipping started. And that wasn't really the right word to describe what happened to Toby when Luke wasn't around. Not even close. So this seems like a pretty good, interesting book. I'll probably finish this one hopefully this week. If y'all need anything, please reach out, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to respond and help in any way that I can. All right, thanks guys. Hope you have a good week. Bye.